If you were to ask me what's a brand that you're sad to see gone, I would reply with Pontiac, because they gave us great hits just like this. This is a 2009 Pontiac G8 GT, and this car has a pretty big following, and there's lots of reasons as to why. It's a pretty special car, and in this review, I'm going to show you all about the Pontiac G8 GT and why it's so special. Now, I say Pontiac gave us this great hit a little bit loosely, because while this is a Pontiac, underneath it's actually something else. It's really a rebadged Holden Commodore. In fact, it's pretty popular for people to do conversions to bring these back to the Holden looks. Take the Pontiac front end, change it with the Holden front end and the rear end as well. At the time, GM owned Holden and Pontiac, and they needed a new sedan for Pontiac. So they went over to the land down under and took the Commodore and rebadged it as a Pontiac. There were three main trim levels for the G8. They had the G8 base, the G8 GT, and the G8 GXP. While the base Pontiac G8 had a V6 in it, the GT got a 6.0-liter V8. This engine produced 355 horsepower as well as 384 pound-feet of torque. It was mated to, with the only option in the GT, a 6-speed automatic transmission, and all that power was sent to the rear wheels. That was good enough to launch this car to 60 in 5.5 seconds and give it a top speed, electronically limited, to 140. But some people do claim without that electronic limiter, it can reach speeds up to 170 miles an hour. That's pretty impressive for a 2009, and this whole package being a rear-wheel drive V8 sedan is why these cars are so popular. If you're concerned about being able to daily drive these things, they're super reliable. In fact, they also get decent gas mileage for a V8 sedan, 15 city, 24 highway. Paired with that amazing drivetrain is equally as amazing looks. I love how the G8s look, and the GTs give it a little more of an edge than the average G8s. This one specifically has the premium package and the sport package, which gives you these 19-inch rims. Awesome looking rims, fit this car very well. Normally I'm not a huge fan of 5-spoke rims, but here it works very well. Focusing on this car's looks, Pontiac had this split grille design going on for pretty much their entire existence, and here it works very well. Makes it look almost like an arrow. The headlights and the grille look pretty aggressive, adding to that aerodynamic design. And this Pontiac split grille doesn't just end there. It actually continues onto the hood scoop where they've split it to match the grille. On the bottom of the bumper, you also have another subtle grille with 2 fog lights. As we focus onto the side profile of the car, while we're moving that direction, look at the fender flares. It almost looks like a wide-body car out of the factory. Looking at the side profile of this car, it's nothing too crazy. It's pretty much a typical sedan. There's nothing really different about the GTs. There is these side skirts which do look pretty good, giving it almost a ground effects look. And again, looking down the sides, you can see the rear end also has these fender flares as well. Onto the rear end of the G8, it's pretty short. There's a small little spoiler going across the top end of the trunk area, and also pretty high up there is the tail lights. And I want to stop there for 1 second. The only thing that I'm not a huge fan of about the G8 is really the tail lights. I don't not like them, I just think there could have been a better way to incorporate it into the design. I feel like if they were flipped almost upside down, it would have complemented this car better, making it look slightly more aggressive in the rear. I feel as if the rear is almost a little bit too simple. However, with that being said, you can do a lot of mods to them, making it look more aggressive, and I definitely don't not like this design. I am a fan of it. I just would have liked to see something a little more aggressive. However, going back to the positives, I do really like this bumper, where it has a quad tip exhaust and a little bit of a diffuser looking area next to that exhaust. But while we're back here, I do want to look at the stance of this car and how good it looks. Of course, I've mentioned these fender flares already, but I have to point them out again. From each angle, you can see how nice it makes this car look. Moving on to the G8 GT's interior. This one is equipped with the premium package, which adds a few things, such as leather seats, a leather-wrapped steering wheel, power driver and passenger seats, as well as heated seats. There's a decent amount of technology in here for an 09, such as dual-zone AC control, automatic passenger and driver windows, and the heated seats as I mentioned before. You do have controls on your steering wheel for things such as the radio and the mini screen in between your tachometer and your speedometer. Speaking of the radio, this one does have a screen. While it's not touchscreen, there is still a screen. There's a few things I want to note about this radio. You do have AM, FM radio, CD, and aux input. I've been driving this car for about a day now. The aux input works perfectly with an iPhone as long as you have the proper cord. As far as how the interior looks, it's held up pretty well for an '09. Of course, this having the premium package looks a bit nicer than the average GT, but still, a regular GT would look pretty nice without these seats. One thing that surprised me is these door panels do have leather on them. And as far as the other plastics in this interior, they don't feel too cheap. While they are a cheaper material, they aren't typical too cheap GM plastics. Lastly, there is a power-operated sunroof. You can do tilt or you can fully open it. One thing before we do move back outside the car that surprised me a bit is there's no badging in here that relates to G8 GT. There is one G8 badge, and that's in the gauge cluster, but beyond that, there's nothing else. I kind of suspect that this is the case because it was a rebadged Holden, but at the same time, if you've ever seen a GXP, the trim level that's a little bit higher than this, there's badging on that car. Why couldn't they do it here? It's a minor complaint, but I would have liked to see a couple badges representing the GT. And there you have it. That was the 2009 Pontiac G8 GT, a pretty special car, and you can see why a lot of people like it, including myself. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you choose to look at it, they do tend to hold their value pretty well. Picking up a really clean example of these can run anywhere from 20 to 30,000, or super low mile examples can bring almost 40. Something like this, with 97,000 miles and only one owner, will bring anywhere from low to mid-20s. Do I think they're worth all that money? Actually, yes. They're pretty special cars that they didn't make a whole lot of, plus they've got a 6-liter V8 making a decent amount of horsepower, and it also has a pretty good amount of tuning potential. There's a lot of people that modify the crap out of these things and can make pretty special cars, and they're relatively practical as well. So if you're looking for a pretty reliable, tunable, fun 4-door sedan that's rear-wheel drive with a big V8, this might just be the car for you. And pick one up while you can. I suspect these prices aren't going to drop anytime soon or ever in the future. Anyway, that was my review on the Pontiac G8 GT. If you like this review, check out my other stuff. I've also got more videos coming up in the future that I'm sure you'll enjoy. And once again, thank you to Carrick Autos for letting me use this Pontiac G8 GT. I'll link Carrick Autos inventory in the description below. And thank you guys for watching.